The last voicemail my father ever left me arrived 3 days after his funeral. I was sitting alone in my bedroom at 17 in the morning when my phone suddenly lit up for a few seconds. I did not understand what I was seeing. Then I saw the name on the screen. Dad, me hands became cold. Me father had been dead for 3 days. His phone had been taken from the hospital by my mother after the doctors had told us there was nothing more they could do. I stared at the screen, wondering if someone had somehow changed the contact name. Then the phone began to vibrate again. A new voicemail, almost deleted. Instead, I pressed play. At first there was nothing but silence. Then I heard his breathing slow and weak, and then his voice, "Mason, if you are hearing this, then I am no longer there." I closed my eyes. I had heard those words before in films, but hearing them from my own father felt completely different. For several seconds he said nothing, then he continued, "I need you to listen carefully because there are things I should have told you while I was alive, things I was too afraid to say." I sat up in bed. Me father had always been a quiet man. He rarely talked about his childhood, never showed us photographs from when he was young. Whenever I asked him about the years before he met my mother, he would simply say that the past was better left alone. I had never questioned him until that night. This voice continued, "They told you that I died peacefully. They told you my heart simply stopped. I do not believe everything you were told." He stopped the recording. Me heart was beating faster. Doctors had said exactly that. They had told my mother that his heart had suddenly failed. They had told us there had been no warning, no suffering, nothing anyone could have Donay played the message again. His voice sounded frightened now. "There's an old house on Millstone Street. You have never been there. I go there. Alanido, not tell your mother. Inside that house you will find something I should have given you many years. I got something that will explain the truth." He looked at the clock. 12:23 in the morning. Then came the final words, "Your mother knows more than she has ever told you." The recording ended. He sat there staring at my phone. My father had been dead for 3 days. Somehow he had left me a message that was not a goodbye, it was a warning. Before sunrise I quietly got dressed. He took the voicemail with me. I took my father's old photograph from the hallway, and without telling my mother where I was going, drove toward Millstone Street. He thought I was going there to discover my father's secret. He had no idea I was about to discover a family secret that had been hidden from me my entire life. Millstone Street was on the oldest side of town. Houses stood close together, and most of the gardens had been forgotten. The road was almost empty when I arrived. At the very end stood a small gray house with broken flower pots beside the front steps. He checked the number on the door. It was the same number my father had given me. I remained inside the car for several minutes. Something about the house felt wrong. There were no lights. No curtains moved behind the windows. There was not even a sign that anyone had entered the place recently. When I walked toward the front door, I noticed something that made me stop. Door was already unlocked. He pushed it open. The house smelled of dust and old wood. A narrow hallway stretched toward a staircase. There was almost no furniture. Only an old table stood beside the wall. On that table was a photography. Picked it up. My father was standing beside a young woman who looked completely different. He was younger, his hair was dark, and he was smiling in a way I had never seen before. The woman beside him had dark hair and gentle eyes. He looked happy. Turned the photograph around. A name was written on the back, Leonore Ender. The name was a date from more than 30 years earlier. He heard footsteps upstairs. He froze. Simeon was walking across the wooden floor. Slow, carefully looked toward the front door. He could leave. Should have left, but my father's voice returned to my mind. "Inside that house you will find something I should have given you years ago." I climbed the stairs. Footsteps stopped. At the end of the hallway was a small room. Inside was an old desk beside a window. On the desk was a wooden box. My father's initials were carved into the lid. He opened the desk drawer. Inside was a small brass key. It fit. The locked box opened with a quiet click. Inside were dozens of letters. Every one of them had been written by my father. Most were addressed to Eleanor. He picked up the oldest letter. "He never stopped loving you, only stopped believing that I deserved to come back." He kept reading. The letters told me that my father and Eleanor had once planned to marry. They had been young and poor, but they had loved each other. Then Eleanor became pregnant. My father had been terrified, believed he Was too young to become a father, believed he would ruin the life of the woman he loved, so he ran away. Letters became harder to read. Wrote about regret, he wrote about searching for Eleanor, wrote about wanting to return. Then I found one final envelope. Me name was written on it. Opened it with shaking hands. Me said, if you found this box, then I have finally run out of time. There is something you need to know. Your mother is not the only woman I ever loved, and you are not my only child. He stopped reading. Me entire body went cold. He looked at the photograph again. Then I noticed another small envelope beneath the letters. Inside was a photograph of a little girl. In the back was written one Melody, and beneath it was a date, the same year I was born. He stared at the photograph, and I heard footsteps behind. Simeon was standing outside the room. He turned around, but there was nobody there, only the sound of the old floorboards moving in the hallway. I grabbed the photograph and the letter, and suddenly I understood why my father had told me to come alone. Knew that once I discovered the truth, he would never be able to look at my family the same way again. I drove home before sunrise. The wooden box was sitting on the passenger seat. He kept looking at the photograph of the little girl, and his sister's words did not feel real. For 30 years I had believed I was an only child. No, I was holding proof that my father had another daughter. When I entered the house, my mother was sitting alone in the kitchen. She looked at Methan. She looked at the wooden box in my hand. Her face changed immediately. Where did you find that? He placed the box on the table. Millstone Street became completely silent. He had never seen my mother look so frightened. He took out the photograph. Who is Eleanor? Me mother closed her eyes. Her father's first love. And Lily began to cry. Asked her again, woe is Lily? Me mother looked at me for a long time. Then she finally told me the truth. For your father met me. He was engaged to Eleanor. They were planning to get married. Then Eleanor became pregnant. Your father was terrified, left because he believed he was not ready to become a father, but he did not know that Eleanor had become seriously ill. She gave birth to a daughter, a little girl named Lil. Me mother wiped her tears. Your father did not know about the child until years later, when he finally discovered the truth. Eleanor was already gone. Could barely speak. Why did you never tell me? Because your father begged me not to believe the truth would destroy our family. You looked at her and did it. Me mother could not answer. She opened a cupboard and removed a small envelope. Her father found Lily several months ago. Opened the envelope. Inside was a hospital address. She had been visiting her. She was ill. Wanted to tell you, wanted you to meet her, but he was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that you would hate him. He looked at the date. Letter had been written only 2 weeks before his death. He suddenly remembered the last months of my father's life. He had become quieter, had started making strange phone calls, would sometimes sit alone in the garden for horse. He had assumed he was thinking about his illness. No, I understood that he had been searching for the daughter he had lost. Me mother reached across the table. There is something else. I looked at here. Your father recorded another message for Lily. She gave me this number before she left the hospital. Me hands began to shake. Where is she? Me mother gave me the address. Is still at the hospital. He stood up. He did not know what I was going to say. Did not know whether she would want to see me. I knew one thing. Me father had spent the final months of his life trying to bring us together, and if I ignored his last wish, then his final voicemail would truly become a goodbye. I drove to the hospital that morning. As I walked through the corridor, I held the photograph of Lily in my hand. Then I stopped outside a small room. A young woman was sitting beside the window. She turned around, and the moment I saw her, I knew she was my sister. For several seconds neither of us spoke. She looked at Methan. She looked at the photograph in my hand. Whoa, are you? He took a breath. I am your brother. Her eyes filled with tears. Me father told me about you. He stepped inside the room. She pointed toward the chair beside Harry. Sat down. Her name was Lily. She was 30 years old. She had spent most of her life believing that her father had abandoned her because he did not want her. She had grown up without knowing his name, without knowing where he lived, without knowing that he had another family. Than 3 months earlier, he had appeared at the hospital, had stood outside her room for nearly 10 minutes before finding the courage to enter. When he finally walked in, Sadie simply looked at her incredulously. told me that he had visited her every week after Faith brought old photographs. She told her stories about his childhood, told her about May. He told her that I had no idea she existed. Then she said something that broke my heart, wanted to bring us together, but he was afraid he would die before he could do it. He showed her the voicemail. She listened quietly. When it ended, she looked at me. He left something for me too. She reached into the drawer beside the bed. She took out an old phone. Then she press play. Me father's voice filled the room. Lily, you know you have every reason to hate me. I cannot give you back the years I took from you. You cannot change the past, but I need you to know that leaving you was the greatest mistake I ever made. I spent my life telling myself that I was protecting you. The truth is that I was protecting myself from fear. His voice became weaker. Dear, as someone I want you to meet. Your brother does not know about you yet, but when he does, I hope he will understand that none of this was your fault. Recording continued. If I am not there when you meet him, please give him a chance, and please give yourself a chance. Do not let my mistakes become the story of your life. Eat message and dead. Lily covered her face. I could not stop my tears. For the first time I understood why my father had been so afraid. He had spent decades carrying guilt, but he had waited too long to face it. He told Lily about my childhood. She told me about hers. Who discovered strange similarities. Both loved old films, both hated crowded places. We both became quiet when we were nervous, and we both had the same habit of tapping our fingers against the table. It felt impossible, yet somehow it felt familiar. Bear I left, she held my hand. You have wanted a family for so long. You looked at here, you have one. No, she smiled. Then I remembered something. There was still one voicemail on my phone that I had not listened to complete. The first message had ended abruptly. He opened it again. At the very end there was a second recording. Me father's voice was barely audible. If you are listening to this with Lily beside you, then there is one final thing you need to know. He looked at my sister. She looked back at me. Neither of us knew what was coming. He pressed play, and the final words my father ever left us changed everything. My father's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. If you are hearing this together, then somehow I have finally done what I should have done many years ago. I brought my children together. He was holding my hand. Neither of us spoke. Keith recording continued. No, you will both have questions. I will ask why I waited. You will ask why I allowed so many years to pass. You may even ask whether I loved you. The answer is yes, he loved you both more than I knew how to explain, but I was afraid, and fear became the reason I kept running. You listened to his words with tears in my eyes. Continued. Every birthday I remembered, every Christmas I wondered where Lily was. Every time I watched my son grow older, I wondered what it would have been like if he had grown up with a sister. I told myself that there would always be another day, another opportunity, another chance to tell the truth, that life does not promise another day. His voice became weaker. He cannot give Lily back the childhood she deserved. He cannot give my son the sister he should have known, and I cannot erase the pain I caused. But I am asking you for one thing: do not spend the rest of your lives carrying my mistakes. Give each other the years I lost. Then the recording became silent for several seconds. We simply sat there. Lily was crying. He was crying too. Outside the hospital window, the evening sky was turning dark. For the first time since my father's death, I did not feel angry, felt sad, but beneath that sadness there was something else. Understanding me. Father had made terrible choice, had hurt people, he had wasted years, but before he died he had finally chosen the truth. And sometimes the truth arrives too late to repair the past, but not too late to change the future. Lily left the hospital a few weeks later. She came to my father's house, who opened the boxes he had left behind. Inside we found photographs, old letters, birthday cards, and memories from a life neither of us had known. Then we found a photograph hidden inside an old book. It was Lily as a little girl. Me father had kept it all those years. In the back he had written her name and one sentence: I hope one day she knows I never forgot her. Lily held the photograph against her chest. Of both Creedman's passage became part of my life. I learned how to be brother and sister. It was strange at first. Sometimes we did not know what to talk about. Sometimes we talked for hours, but slowly the distance disappeared. Celebrated our first Christmas together, watched old films, visited places from our father's childhood, and we began creating memories that should have existed years earlier. I still have the last voicemail saved on my phone, so many times I listen to it. When I miss him, he used to think his final message was about death. No, I understand that it was about life. It was about the years we waste when we are too afraid to tell the truth. It was about forgiveness. It was about familia, and most of all, it was about a second chance. Me father could not change the past, but his final voicemail gave me something I never knew I had lost: a sincere trust and a reason to forgive the man who had spent his entire life running from his greatest mistake. The last voicemail my father ever left me was not goodbye, it was the beginning of the family he should have given me all those years ago.